Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the absolute most dramatic, breathtaking, and honestly deeply misunderstood events in the entire natural world. It's a mystery that has literally baffled everyone from total beginners to seasoned experts for generations. Let's get right into it.
So, picture this scenario, right? You're looking out at your apiary. The colony looks perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. The queen is laying eggs like crazy, the bees are totally calm, and the hive is just bursting with vibrant life. Everything seems 100% under control and incredibly healthy.
And then, suddenly, one morning, chaos. You watch in total disbelief as literally half of the bees vanish into the air in this massive buzzing cloud. And you're thinking, what just happened? It wasn't a disease that wiped them out, no pesticide poisoning, and definitely not starvation. So what exactly caused a perfectly healthy, thriving colony to just spontaneously explode into the sky?
Okay, this is where we really need to address a massive misconception. A lot of people, especially new beekeepers, see this and immediately think the bees have just gone crazy. Or, they think there's been some catastrophic system failure like a bad queen. But the reality, it's the exact opposite. Swarming is not a failure. It's actually the natural reproduction of a system that has reached the absolute peak of its biological strength. It's the oldest biological survival mechanism these bees have.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to completely shift our perspective. We have to stop looking at a hive as just a wooden box full of individual bugs. Instead, we need to understand the superorganism. The bee colony functions as one single large breathing entity. So when a swarm happens, it's not the individual bee reproducing. The colony is literally splitting its single biological entity into two parts to multiply. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
Now, this urge to split, it doesn't just happen overnight to ruin a beekeeper's day. The biological pressure actually develops through hidden triggers long before any physical evidence, like those familiar swarm cells, ever appears on the comb. It happens because, at a very specific moment, the biological system evaluates its resources and simply decides it's time to split. So let's break down exactly what sets off this ticking clock.
The very first major trigger is overcrowding, which essentially leads to an informational breakdown. Think about it like this. When the bee population dramatically increases, but the physical space stays the same, the queen's stabilizing chemical signals, her pheromones, well, they can't circulate evenly throughout the hive anymore. Because of this, a portion of the worker bees literally lose contact with the queen's presence. This informational interruption basically tricks the system, and the colony shifts right into swarming mode.
Then we have our second trigger, which is an invisible biological pressure, age imbalance. When you've got a massive number of young nurse bees, they possess enormous amounts of energy. But if there aren't enough baby bees, or open brood, to feed, and there's absolutely no space to build new wax, they have zero work to do. And that trapped, undirected energy, it doesn't just vanish. It gets aggressively redirected right into fueling the swarming impulse. This is exactly why those perfectly strong colonies in the spring are actually the most dangerous.
Next up is the third trigger, and honestly, it's a total paradox. Heavy nectar intake. I know, it sounds a bit crazy, but a massive nectar flow actually increases the risk of swarming. Why? Well, because the bees are getting this powerful signal from nature that times are incredibly good. And remember, bees aren't wired to act like little factory workers endlessly filling boxes with honey for us. Their ancient primary goal is just to survive and spread their genetics while the weather is perfect. Which brings us to the actual decision makers. We tend to picture the queen as the supreme commander barking orders through a megaphone, right? But the reality is way more fascinating. The queen isn't the boss at all. It's actually the worker bees who make a collective, democratic decision to initiate the swarming process, but only once they evaluate that all those biological conditions have been met.
And once that collective worker decision is made, the execution is totally ruthless and highly complex. The workers actually start restricting the old queen's food. They put her on a strict diet, basically starving her just enough so she stops laying eggs and loses enough weight to physically survive flying out of the hive. And get this, while they're doing this bizarre step, they're simultaneously raising her replacements. The whole system is actively preparing to divide.
So, with all this incredible, complex biology in mind, we really have to pause and ask a pretty hard question. Is swarming always a bad thing? Well, there's a fundamental conflict of interest here. Biologically speaking, nature's goal is pure survival. And a swarm is a magnificent success story for the bees. But for a production beekeeper, it's kind of a disaster. The swarm takes away a huge number of forager bees right before the main honey flow. You essentially lose your most valuable resource at the absolute worst possible time.
Because of that massive loss, professional beekeepers devote a ton of attention to prevention, and it all starts with listening. You literally have to act like a detective looking for early behavioral clues. Are you seeing unnatural congestion at the entrance? Is there a sudden noticeable drop in pollen coming in? Are bees hanging outside the hive in static clusters? Or maybe the queen has drastically slowed down her egg laying. These are the real, undeniable signals that the swarming impulse is building.
And that brings up a fatal misconception that ruins so many seasons. Listen to this. Simply cutting capped swarm cells out of the hive is a doomed strategy. If you only react when you finally see those physical cells, the process is already way too far advanced. The biological drive is fully activated. If you cut them, the bees are just going to build them again. Fighting swarming is not fighting swarm cells. It is fundamentally about fighting the biological conditions that activated the impulse in the first place.
The dividing line between a novice and an expert is actually pretty simple. A beginner reacts to the consequences. They see a swarm cell and they cut it out. An experienced beekeeper, however, reads those invisible processes before they ever explode. They manage the internal biology early on so that those swarm cells never even get drawn in the first place.
Now, you can't fight nature, but you definitely can manage the superorganism using a specific prevention toolkit. This means managing space early so the bees feel a sense of expansion, and ensuring proper ventilation so the hive doesn't overheat and feel even more crowded. It also means directing that explosive energy of the young bees by giving them comb to build. And finally, choosing calm genetics, because let's be honest, even the best management in the world will fail against a biologically hyper-aggressive swarm line.
But out of all those tools, there is one absolute master key: timing. As the old rule goes, beekeeping is a game of timing, and sometimes a few days can decide your entire season. If the swarming impulse has already been activated internally, you can throw all the extra boxes you want on that hive, and they are still going to swarm. Top-level management isn't just about popping open a hive and tossing in a frame. It's about anticipating the biology days ahead of time.
The superorganism is constantly communicating with us. It's telling us its biological needs, its stresses, and its tipping points. So, as we wrap up this explainer, the next time you step into an apiary, I want you to ask yourself, are you just blindly opening wooden boxes to react to what you find? Or are you truly listening to the fascinating, hidden